It's been a really wonderful experience getting to know St Hilda's over the last 18 months or 2 years and working on this fantastic project. St Hilda's is a really unique space, unique college, and demands a unique response. It's been a chance to really wrestle with some of the great architectural issues of our time. St Hilda's, to me or to us, is the river and the gardens, the buildings, the variegated buildings which frame and support these gardens, but most importantly, it's also the people, the academic community, and therefore, and its relationship to the rest of Oxford University. I mean, it's an ambitious college, and we think that the physical setting should really reflect this. However, there are certain aspects, in particular the physical context of the building, which don't quite meet these ambitions, and we feel need to move forward slightly. For example, if we take this photograph looking down Cowley Place, there is a series of, it's very confusing to understand how to actually enter St Hilda's. There's a series of doorways and gateways that have been added over time, a series of false dawns, if you like, as you move down the road. And then at the end of the Cowley Place is actually this new green roof building of Magdalen College School. And that's of a very different scale to what maybe perhaps some people might remember St Hilda's to be about today. We really feel it's necessary to to work in this new context to create a significant marker, a bold new building which reflects St Hilda's and draws you down Cowley Place. That's been one of our key considerations of our proposals. Once you arrive at St Hilda's at present, there's a confusing lack of clarity over the organisation of the spaces. You actually arrive into an area where there's a turning circle, there's sort of bins and bikes, and a sort of confusion as to which way, where is the entrance, where is St Hilda's, even once you've arrived there. It's more akin potentially to a service entrance, or a back door if you like. And I think from the very start, from the brief which was written by the college and then we've taken on that vision, was to try and make a transformative space here. So a space which is going to be uplifting, very much rooted within relationship to Oxford, and was all about bringing the gardens and the essence of St Hilda's through to the beginning of your journey within the college. St Hilda's College has evolved incrementally over the years. It's rather than evolve into a purpose-built master plan in a series of buildings, it's actually involved in a piecemeal manner through acquiring a series of different buildings and spaces over the years. It began in 1893 when Dorothea Beale took over Cowley Hall, itself a 18th century charming house on the riverbanks. It was actually built for Professor Sibthorpe of the Botanical Gardens at the time, and it itself is a sort of collection of exotic architectural plants, which we quite like playing off. Then in 1921, the college acquired Cowley Grange, which is now known as the South Building, and that was a building that was built in about 1875, I think. And then in 1958, the college acquired Milham Ford, and then for the first time, then the site curtilage as we know it now of St Hilda's was complete. It was possible to move from the north to the south, albeit on a slightly crooked route between the two. Now, the fact that this college has evolved incrementally over time means that there is no one overriding style, and it has a certain sense of charm for that matter. But it also there's a downside of having a lack of coherence, lack of cohesion across the college campus. And I think part of our vision for the architectural concept, and also the college's vision, has been to improve and create a more cohesive campus, as if it was a purpose-built piece, without losing some of the charm that exists already. The concept is in three parts. Firstly, we open up the gardens to the north and to the south. So we allow the gardens themselves along the river to sweep all the way through from north to the south. These gardens in the middle point are then framed by a new, what we call a boundary building. This building is a 4-storey building which relates in scale and massing to both the hall building and the south building. It also takes on certain of the architectural features as well, and the scale and proportion of the windows, the openings, etc. This building we've sort of affectionately termed as the third sister. This building then frames, as well as forming the boundary, it also frames the gardens and also introduces a new, if you like, sort of boundary to almost what's at the centre of Oxford, how the centre of Oxford is understood. And it relates to the botanical gardens and Christchurch's meadows and allows wonderful views out to those. Within then this new extended garden from the north to the south, we then place a lyrical Riverside Pavillion. This is quite a transparent, permeable structure which will play with light and shadow and allow for movement through the building and through the garden itself. It's a much more modest scale structure than the existing Mill and Ford building which it replaces, yet it takes on some of the key characteristics of that, for example filtering of light and riverside views and delicate architectural metalwork. Another part of the concept is then, as a counterpoint to the pavilion, there is also then a slender, elegant tower point which sits at the end and defines the entrance. So here we are in this image looking down Cowley Place with our proposal in the background. You can very clearly see that the new tower for St Hilda's does a number of things. First of all, it draws the eye down Cowley Place, it very clearly marking where the entrance should be. It's also a new marker or icon for St Hilda's College, and it will use some of the iconography and some of the architectural language of the existing buildings and the college logo and brand. Thirdly, it's an element which allows a dialogue and communication with the rest of Oxford through its skyline. So here we are, we've moved down Cowley Place and now looking at the entrance area. You can see we've actually allowed a slightly more generous expansion of the pavement where there's an area for some seating and a tree. And we see this as a sort of gift to the city. You also, as part of that gift, is also a view through these decorative railings through to the gardens and then the river beyond. We've been very carefully balancing getting the right level of enclosure for the college within in that traditional way of a building of a college having a boundary and interior, whilst also trying to make sure we haven't lost some of the more informal, relaxed nature of entrance which St Hilda's currently enjoys. A typical Oxford college might have a sort of timber door and very much shut off to the rest of the city. And there's something quite nice about that element of surprise when you move through that gate into a sort of a more expansive interior. And we wanted to introduce a little element of that within the proposals. Yet at the moment, St Hilda's very much isn't a college of an Oxford quad. You know, it is more contemporary and slightly more relaxed in its nature. And we were wanting to ensure that we kept an element of that whilst creating this element of surprise when moving within the building. And it certainly will have be a lovely journey. As you move down that colonnade, you'll start to get light filtered in past a sort of a verdant garden to the right-hand side. And then you'll move through at the end of this colonnade, the end of the tunnel as it were, you'll suddenly be opened up. And from in that midpoint, that sense of the new heart of the college, you'll be able to look one way towards the city and towards the towers of Oxford. And then to the other side, you'll be able to look down towards the South Gardens. So as you can see, this new view, for the first time, you've really opened up this view from one side of the college to the other. And so you'll have that really clear, direct line of vision. And that's because actually the existing Mill and Ford building, although it has got that quite nice riverside edge to it, it's actually quite a big building, and it more or less divides the whole college in two. So by reshaping the massing and the forms on here, you've opened up the light and the views and the gardens to form that important link between the two. Across the building, in both the forms of the building but also the detail scale, we've been very much trying to consider the question about how this building is for St Hilda's and is all about St Hilda's. Part of that comes through the basic outline, and positioning of the buildings, as I said, framing the gardens, which is very much what we feel the essence of St Hilda's is about, but it comes down to the detail level as well. We spent a lot of time over the last 18 months photographing, drawings and recording certain details of the existing buildings. As I said before, it's almost like the hall building is in itself a collection of exotic architectural plants. And some of these, for example, the scalloped windows, window headed details in the south building start to reoccur again within the scalloped elevation of the upper story of the boundary building. We also have parts of the middle and fore building where the more decorative balustrade element starts to then to define and influence the design of parts of the Pavillion building. At an even more detailed level, that of pieces which the actual building is made out of, we're thinking about how we might integrate some of the iconography of St Hilda's. For example, here there is a snake carved into the column near the entrance area. That in itself refers to the myths of St Hilda's in Whitby turning snakes into stone. We also have at the top of the tower element where we're looking at a more decorative, more uncompromisingly elegant and beautiful crowning element to actually be made out of parts of the St Hilda's logo. For example, the estoiles, the curved stars, or even might even be parts of the unicorn, to be folded into a fantastic and very highly embellished piece of metalwork at the top of the building. There are also, even the window details themselves have been inspired by looking at the proportions, the type of sill, the type of lintel, the type of brickwork reveals of other existing windows on the site. From the very start, our intention is to make a building for St Hilda's which is very much of its own time. However, we've also been wanting to make sure it's a building that relates to those existing buildings of St Hilda's. We've been trying to achieve this by creating a building which has a real sense of character and personality in itself, one that is capable, therefore, of entering into dialogue with those buildings surrounding it. We haven't wanted just to try and match the style of one nor another, because none of those architectures ever tried that either, but rather create a new and bold and confident piece of architecture which will lend from the proportions, the scale, the detailing of those neighbouring buildings in a sort of very contemporary yet elegant manner. This drawing is a cross-section through the college which runs from the river through to the street, to Cowley Place. And this really shows how we now have at the heart of the college a cross-section of buildings which will really accommodate and allow for a vibrant collegiate life. It starts off at the river with the most public part of the proposal, which is for a new pavilion where the teaching's for teaching, for lectures, for events, maybe even for weddings. We then have the boundary building, which provides many important rooms and spaces for a vibrant collegiate life. So these are rooms which include a new porter's lodge and a new MCR. It's going to be a fantastic new MCR with views out towards Oxford. A number of student rooms, a number of guest rooms, academic offices, real new heart to the college. And then on the upper level of here, we also, of course then have a very special series of roof gardens, which themselves have then a relationship looking back to Oxford. Now, all of these pieces then frame between the two. You can then see between the boundary building and pavilion, then the garden, which comes between the two. And as I said before, that's that space which really allows those views through between the north and the south of the college at the moment. Building sustainability is a really important part of all of our work, and we take it very seriously. In this project, we've teamed up with fantastic mechanical and electrical engineers and consultants, Skelly and Cooch, and we're working very closely with them to ensure that this building not only minimises the amount of energy that might be required to allow the building to operate, but also provide a series of very comfortable and enjoyable spaces to be within, which is a really important aspect as well. So in order to do that, we've been thinking very carefully about the amount of natural daylighting that we can achieve within all the buildings to minimise artificial lighting. Also thinking about ventilation to allow that all spaces can have a nice flow of air within them, without the need for any air conditioning. There's no air conditioning proposed in any of this proposal at the moment. And we're also ensuring that the building is really well insulated and really well built and airtight, so it minimises the amount of energy we actually have to put into the building in the first instance. One feature that might be worth pulling out is that within the boundary building there's actually an atrium space that you can see through the left-hand side of the section, the building section. Now that allows us to get light down into the deeper parts of the plan below, near where the porter's lodge is, but it also allows us to draw air up like a chimney through the building to allow cross ventilation, to ensure that you can allow for natural ventilation to all parts of the building. And it's quite a sort of innovative way of thinking about integrating these technologies at the moment. We're investigating, or have been looking into, even being able to extract energy from the river. Now that's something that might not take a part of this current plan application, but it's something that's a piece of work which we're carrying on and might become part of a later phase. Through the process of designing this building, we've looked at many different viewpoints. I mean, we've actually developed a 3D computer model in which we thought about all viewpoints and the way you move through, and our building sort of shapes itself and choreographs itself in a way to movement through the site. In this one particular example, then you see from here, from this time from the gardens of the hall building, you can see how the new pavilion sits slightly behind the existing cedar tree, and then forms as a sort of jewel in its landscape, as it were. And just to the right hand side there's some steps leading up to a river walkway. So for the first time you're going to be able to walk along the path, of the Riverside path you see in the front of the hall building gardens here, up and then across in front of the pavilion. And actually in this next view, which is looking from, this time from the south, actually from the opposite side of the riverbank, we can see this river walkway which moving across the front of the pavilion, and in itself forms a space in which the pavilion can open its doors onto, and people can move out to and enjoy the view and the river and the air, and break out from the hall itself. Just to the foreground of the pavilion, there's actually then a terrace, which is a space which will enjoy southwest light. It would be wonderful sort of afternoon and evening light, and we imagine a fantastic space for sort of drinks or events or parties, or just sitting there and reading a book in the daytime. And that itself then links down to the area of the punts, and itself then evolves into the fantastic lawn, which is the front of the south building. So I think this image really captures how our buildings really try and frame the life of St Hilda's. So together, these new buildings and the pavilion and the landscape really both frame but also enhance the life of St Hilda's, allow more of the population, the college community, to really enjoy the gardens of the river, especially at this key pivotal point of the site. Marking the entrance and the heart, if you like, of St Hilda's is an elegantly proportioned, slender tower. As you can probably imagine, when you're building something which might peek its head above the parapet within Oxford, this has to be very carefully considered, and it's been something we've evolved with Historic England, with the planners, over the last 18 months with part of the planning process. And actually it's something that all those involved in the project are really bought into this idea now of it having this marker. So then to actually evolve this, the form of this, it developed through actually looking at some of the other towers and wonderful points of height within Oxford as well, so that our building could have a relationship to those and enter into dialogue with those. So our proposed tower is a proportion which is very similar to some of those other towers, yet it is something which is very uniquely part of St Hilda's and unique to St Hilda's as well. It's something we imagine that when you might be coming over Magdalen Bridge potentially, or on Town Gardens, on Cowley Place, you might just catch a small glimpse of this piece, and you'd be able to say, well, that's the St Hilda's Tower. I think what's really important when you're building with something with a little bit more height is what it's made out of is extremely important. It needs to be of high quality materials. It needs to also think about how this is viewed from different angles and how it might change slightly as you move around the site. So we've been thinking very carefully about how the portions of our building are sort of elegant from all viewpoints, from both Cowley Place and also the Botanical Gardens and Christchurch Meadows. But then also, what also is very important is its context, basically being the sky for a tower. So it has to be thinking about how it forms a silhouette and really frames views to and through it. And so how our tower meets the sky is through this decorative element, which is this filigree element which starts to dissolve into the sky, but in itself interweaves parts of the St Hilda's iconography. In itself, it feels almost as well like a piece of vegetation which is sort of frozen, as if, and in that way referencing back to the origins of St Hilda's and as the original buildings of Cowley Hall, being that of Professor Sibthorpe's house when he was at the time of being the originator of the Botanical Gardens or working at the Botanical Gardens. The decorative elements of the tower have in part been inspired by Rachel Wright-Reed's Whiteshell Art Gallery. In this building, in this applied artwork to this building, she creates a series of sort of golden, quite filigree branches and leaves which appear to grow out of the stonework and become more floral, as it were, as it reaches towards the top. This in itself was inspired by the Successionist building in Vienna. The school, obviously the school of Wittgenstein. And it seems sort of relevant and valid to be thinking about that, not directly copying that or mimicking that, but as a way of that to be part of the field of inspiration for our tower design, given the progressive nature of St Hilda's College, both in its history and its foundations and today as well. It was very important to us that, and I think to the college community, that the tower shouldn't just be a marker, a sort of hollow gesture, if you like, but it also has imbued one with the meaning, as we've talked about, the decoration we've just talked about, but also in terms of use as well. There is actually at the top of this tower element is a special room, a modest scale space, a sort of viewing platform, but also a sort of winter garden where you may be able to sort of meet and congregate, have a meeting, or a very special space, a very privileged space. And a space though that you can actually get a lift to it and staircase as well, so it's completely accessible to all. From this special winter garden, you'll then be able to look out, have the most amazing views, 360 panoramic views, both to Oxford, but also to the west and the south as well. It really will be a unique space. And it then has a relationship down a spiral staircase down to these amazing roof terraces, which work along all the way along and weave themselves along the top of the boundary building. So, in conclusion, it's been really wonderful to be part of the wider team, including the rest of the collegiate community within that, in developing this vision for St Hilda's. We're actually at a stage we're about to submit to planning, and it's very encouraging to see so far the level of support which has come through to date, both from the Oxford Design Review Panel, the Historic England, the Oxford Planning Department, and within that has come interrogation and discussion and design evolution with various other expert architects, heritage consultants, landscape architects, as a process of helping to refine and develop the scheme over the last 18 months. It's very exciting though as well that this is just the first phase of a wider master plan for the whole college, which will then continue with phase 2 at the successful completion of this project.